Okay, in part three of our video series on this assignment, we're going to talk a little bit about making this scatter plot. We've downloaded, we've located and downloaded and cleaned up the data that we need to work with. How are we going to put this together? We've got four different data sources here representing the four data variables. We've got one from the county health rankings, that's the chlamydia rate. We've got one that's the Trump vote. We've got one that is the population of the county, and we've got one that is the result of the county by state. So let's see if we can assemble that data to make one single plot. Now, if we look at our data on disk and the way that we've cleaned it up, it looks something like this. There's our chlamydia data, state election results, population counts, and election. How do we put all this together into a single piece that we can then make a single scatter plot? Well, we need to join all of this stuff up. We need to join it by FIPS code. Now, you can join things, you can sort of join things in Excel, but given the fact that you're all familiar with ARC, I think the easiest way is to do it there. So we're going to add our data in, and we're going to start with we'll start with our actually, let's start with our population counts. Okay, just had to hit the refresh button here to get to the new data so that they matched. Don't forget, if you don't see what you're looking for in the window, try refreshing it. All right, so we're going to start with the population counts, and the reason I want to start with this is that this is likely to be the most complete data set. This is the data that we got from the U.S. Census, and so we can expect that we should have most of the counties, if not all of the counties, in that data set. So we're going to go ahead and bring that in. We can take a look at that. It should be what we saw before. We've got a GeoID, we've got a FIPS code, and we've got a population count. We don't have any spatial data. We're not going to be worried about that right now, although we will soon. But this is enough to get us going. Now the easiest thing that we can join to that might be the election data, right? That's also it doesn't really matter which one we do first, but let's just go ahead and do the election data. We'll bring that in, and all of that data is on sheet 1. Okay, so here we have our county, our state, and so on. So we need to join this by FIPS code. You'll notice, though, that our FIPS code came in as a 4-digit code. If you look back on our population counts, this one successfully came in as a text field, so you can see that this one is aligning left. This one is aligning right. So that's a good visual indicator that we're dealing with two different data types here. So we need to join those up. What I would do is we'll just cut this out. And take a look at our data and see if we can figure out why. And if we open this up, you can see that our FIPS code, even in Excel, is being given as a number 1001. And again, this isn't uncommon. We've seen this before. So we're just going to make a new code here, and we're going to use this GeoID kind of interchangeably with the FIPS code. If we need to convert a number to text, the way to do it in Excel is with a function called text. So we're going to text on E2, and then the next parameter here is format text. You basically type in the quotation mark to indicate that it's a text field. And then 5 zeros is going to make this a 5-digit number, which is actually a string. So now we've got this coming in the way that we would expect it. And this is just kind of an unfortunate part of how this was stored in the original data set. Okay, so now we have our FIPS code and our GeoID, and we'll save that, and we'll see if that does the trick to get it in the way that we need it. All right, so this is still coming in kind of in the same way as before. we'll take another tack. Okay, so that went by pretty quickly. You can rewind the video and look. I wasn't 100% sure this was going to work, but what I did was just copied and pasted the values from the formula calculation. And when I pasted them as values, again, this is what kind of did the trick. Now you can see that these are coming in as numbers and the leading zeros have gone away. So this is just kind of one more reason of a dozen reasons why copying and pasting by value, unless you need the formulas to propagate in some way, is a good idea. Okay, so now we should be able to do the join. So we're going to do data and join. So we're going to use population counts at our beginning. We're going to join it based on, and we need to make sure that we did this correctly. So we're going to be joining it on the FIPS code, not the GeoID, right? We're going to join that to sheet 1, which is our election results, and we are going to join that based on GeoID, and we can just verify that that's what we want. So, being careful about the names interchange, names can switch on you. Ideally, I probably would come up with a better name for these that would make it clear, but this is fine. So we'll hit OK or run, and that's going to do the join. And now if we look at our population counts field, we'll see the rest of our information coming in. So year, which we don't really care about, we probably could have cut that out. We've got some redundancy here in FIPS and GeoID. We don't really care about that. And then we have our % Trump vote, which is what we really do care about. So we're getting some things that we don't care about, but actually some of this is going to come in handy. We're going to want some of this stuff here in a minute. Okay, so at this point, I would probably export this table. Now you can kind of handle this however you want. I'm going to make a new geodatabase project. Let's be a little bit more descriptive. Assignment 3 is probably fine. We'll open that up and we're going to put it first join. Now that's not a great name, but that is going to do the trick. And the idea here is we have 2 more joins to do, and I want to be able to kind of firewall or sort of separate out the steps so that if something fails down the line, rather than trying all 3 in a row and having something crash right at the end before I could save it, I can kind of go back to points in time. And so if I look at the table here on first join, I've got all of that stuff and I know that it's in there. So, and I've also exported this to a geodatabase. So the reason that I did that is to make sure that the data types that we're looking at here stay where I want them. In other words, if something is a text field, or something is an integer, or something is a float, I want them to stay that way. And so geodatabases are a good way of doing that. Shapefiles are good with that as well. I mean, those are databases. But I found this to be a little bit more reliable. Exporting to something like a Excel file would be convenient here at the end, and we're going to do that, but not so useful in the middle stages. Okay, so we actually don't need this information anymore. We can get rid of that. All of the information that we needed from population and election has now been included in our analysis here. The next thing that I want to bring in here is the chlamydia data. So that's in STI, and we'll bring that here in sheet 1. We can take a look at that and make sure that this is in the format that we're going to like and be able to deal with. So we've got a FIPS code here that we can see is aligning left. We've got our leading zeros in here. So we can be fairly confident that our join is going to work. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So we're joining sheet 1, and we're joining it to the FIPS code that we see in sheet 1, and we'll hit run. Layer has an invalid foreign key. Okay, well, we'll see if we can figure out why. All right, so to troubleshoot this one, again, joins do sometimes fail. Let's try joining our other data first. It doesn't really matter which way we do this, so I'm going to take the state election results and pull that in here, and we're going to try to do a join on that instead. The first thing I want to do is just open it up and see. So we've got a state name here. We've got voted for here. One thing you might notice, though, is that we've got field 1 at the top and field 2 at the top, which means that these actually came in as data and not as headers. So that didn't work either. So we're going to need to fix that. This is why inspecting your data is really important. So we'll open up our state election results and see if we can figure out what happened. This looks okay to me. So we're going to copy and paste this, and I'm just going to paste this as values again, stripping off some of the formatting that might be here, and then deleting this. You'd be surprised at how often pasting by value will bail you out of trouble. And the reason for that is that an Excel document is actually a fairly moderately complicated binary document. It contains a lot of information. And so if you can simplify that a little bit, sometimes you can make your life a lot easier. Yeah, for some reason that didn't want to. Let's try that again. So we had added, the tip off here was that we had created sheet 2 and this is sheet 1, so something went wrong already. All right, so I don't know why that's not populating correctly, but we know that we're looking for sheet 2. Let's see if that works. No. Huh. Okay. Let's all right, again, troubleshooting this stuff is really par for the course. This looks like a normal file. I don't see anything particularly wrong with this. We can rename this as sheet 1 just to kind of save ourselves some trouble. None of this should have any bearing on it, but it's when you're dealing with loading issues and things that don't load right, keeping things simple is a good idea. So we'll open that back up again. Okay, so this still came in not the way we would want it. Why does this matter? We don't need to populate this data. So it is important to kind of, we could try joining that and it might even work. But you're kind of crossing your fingers as opposed to really fixing the problem. Let's see if we can figure this out. We'll change formats here. So instead of saving this as an Excel file, I'm going to save this as a CSV. Why save it as a CSV? Because I want to try to keep things, again, as simple as I can. This isn't much data. We don't have any extra weird stuff going on as far as I can tell. But if we do, saving this as a CSV may help us. I'm going to open this up in a text editor here and just see what's going on. All right, this looks like a perfectly good CSV file to me, so I think probably that should solve the problem. We'll add our data in here and refresh. Okay, so now our state is coming correctly and our voted for has come in correctly. Yep, just a kind of random error. We could dig it a little bit to try to figure that out, but we've definitely got it in the way we want it now. Let's try to join our data up. So in this case, we're going to be joining by state. We have a couple of different state variables here, but this is the first one that I see, state underscore PO. So we'll do a join. We'll join from first state PO. Our join table is going to be our state of election results, and we're going to be joining it based on state. And we'll hit run. All right. So this is a kind of a join that you may not be used to doing. This is kind of a many to one kind of a join. We have lots of different counties, lots of different duplicate states, but ideally we want all of them to wind up for any state that went Trump, any state that went Trump, or any county that was in a state that went Trump should be flagged as a Trump state. So we've got that all down here, and as we scroll through, we should be able to find a state that definitely went Clinton. All right, it's New York. Went Clinton, so we can verify that all of the counties now, whether they have a Trump percentage or not, so this is an example of a Trump percentage above 50%. This particular county went Trump, but the state as a whole went Clinton. And so that's getting at how these colored dots would appear. Okay, so that worked, and we are going to export, just like we did before, we're going to export our table here as a table. So we had first join, this is second join. No need to save this other than just paranoia, making sure that if my computer crashes or if ARC crashes, I've got my data still. Looks like that's maybe not done yet. Oh, I didn't hit the run button. Here we go. Okay, so here's second join. I now don't need any of this stuff, so I can get rid of it and I can inspect my table. Okay, so just kind of browsing through here, I can make sure that we're where we need to be. So the last thing that we needed was the chlamydia data. So we're going to add that data in. So we had tried this before and run into some trouble. So here's our chlamydia data from the county health statistics in this Excel worksheet. And there's our chlamydia right there, and there's our FIPS code. So we should be able to do the join. We're going to be joining this from second join. Let's just take a look at that code. We're going to be joining it on FIPS. This is one of the things that's probably gone wrong. So you see that this is capital FIPS. We just want to make sure that we're using that one. What are we joining it on? We're joining it on sheet 1, and then this particular tab. So we can hit OK and kind of hope that that works. That was probably our problem before. But now if we look at second join, we should at the end find chlamydia rate. All right, so that's all come in correctly. We'll now export our data here as our final data set. And just run that. Okay, so I'm going to remove these two pieces. The last thing, so as I've said here, this is all non-spatial. We don't have any geography attached to that. We might want some. So I've downloaded I've downloaded the county, the cartographic boundaries for the county layer for 2016. And I'm going to extract those here. And then we can just bring our data in here. Don't need that. And so we should be able to join this up as well. So we need to do a join. We'll take a quick look at this table to make sure we're doing the right thing. So in this case, we want to use the GeoID from this table. We do kind of want to make sure that we have our leading zeros coming in correctly here, which we do. So our input join field is going to be GeoID. And then we're joining into the final non-spatial data set. We can open that up. And here we're just going to use that lowercase FIPS. We've got a lot of redundant data in here now, which is not great, but shouldn't matter too much. Okay, so if we open this data up, we can look at our attribute table again. And now not only do we have all of our spatial data, but we should have all of our non-spatial data as well. We may be missing a few things. So for instance, this looks like maybe that's in Puerto Rico. So we don't have election results for that. But this is most of what we want, and so we can just export this stuff out. I want to make sure that I clear my selection here. Export this out. Okay, so this is going to come in handy for part 3. Now we've got sort of a geographic component. We can run some of our tools in here. But what I want to do here is just this one really quick. We're going to do an export table. In fact, what I want to do is table to Excel. So remember that our goal here, thinking big picture, is to be able to replicate this graph and ideally this analysis. So can we run a regression on this data? Let's export this stuff. We've got our final non-spatial data set. It wouldn't really matter which one of these we used. Where do we want to put this? We're just going to put this into our desktop folder. And we'll call it joined data. I'm not going to worry too much about this. Sometimes a field alias is nice. I don't care about any of that, so we'll just hit OK. Okay, so if everything has gone as planned, we should, in our data folder now, oops, wound up here, that's fine. We should have our joined data that we can open up. And we've lost some of these things have gotten a little bit chaotic. We could go in here and fix it. In fact, at this point, we could get rid of a lot of the data that we no longer care about. So what we do care about are probably the FIPS code. We don't care about any of this. We might care about states later, so I'm going to leave those in there. This is the county name. We might eventually care about that. This is our candidate votes. This is our total votes. This is our percent Trump. We definitely care about that. It looks like we're missing our population data. All right, so I was a bit too ambitious here in getting rid of things, so I've Control-Z'd back. This is our population count, so we definitely want to keep that. This is our FIPS code, and we want to keep that. So we're just going to get rid of these first 2 columns. Keep our FIPS code. keep our population. We don't care about these things. We don't care about that anyway. State name, state abbreviation, county name. This is more replication, right? So these are just kind of versions of the FIPS code again. We don't care about who the candidate was because we had filtered that out already. These are the number of votes for Donald Trump, and these are the total number of votes cast, but we don't actually need that anymore because we have %Trump that we had calculated. So we can get rid of these. Now, the reason I'm comfortable getting rid of all this stuff is because we still have a copy of our original data. If this were the only copy, I certainly wouldn't be deleting all this stuff kind of willy-nilly, but we do, so I am. We already have this. This is another state abbreviation, so we can get rid of this column. This is who the state voted for, so that's not redundant information. That's important. These are all more redundant again, so many of our data sets had sort of multiple copies of county names or state names. And then this is our chlamydia rate. And this is voted. State voted for. Okay, so this data set represents kind of a nice reduction of most of what we cared about at this stage. We've assembled our data, we've joined our data. This is a much more, by doing joins, we're doing this kind of much more robustly than if we had tried to do this just sort of like sorting columns by FIPS code or sorting columns by name. You know, that probably would work, but there's a good chance that errors are going to creep in. So if you can avoid doing that kind of thing, you're probably a little bit better off. Okay, so we're going to end this video right here, and we're going to talk about creating the scatter plot for this next.